Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sawyer Rosenstein. I am a host here at NSF. We are NASASpaceflight.com. We are a group of space enthusiasts and journalists here that do our best to cover everything going on in spaceflight. And today, obviously, there has been some breaking news aboard the International Space Station. We are expecting a press conference from NASA coming up within the next 15 minutes or so. So we will, of course, bring that to you live, and we will include our commentary afterwards on what we hear and what we know. Let me just start right off the bat by saying, given the serious nature of everything that is going on with this, we will not be reading super chats. We appreciate everybody's support and thank you for it, but obviously with things going on, a little more serious stream today. I am joined by some of our top journalists here with us as well. Joining me as co-host here is Ryan Caton. How's it going, Ryan?
Hey Sawyer, hey everybody. Of course, not a fantastic situation, not a reason we would want to be live right now, but it's important nonetheless, so we're going to bring you the details in a minute.
Also joining us from the Kennedy Space Center currently is Max Evans. How's it going, Max?
It's going.
Yeah.
Rather tense situation, I think it's fair to say. And we haven't really had this happen in quite a long time aboard the space station. Certainly not in recent memory. So waiting to hear more about what NASA has to say.
And we'll talk about the history of kind of what's gone on in the past with situations similar to this, because the list is very small, but there are some similar incidents, at least based off of what we know now. Speaking of, Ryan, can you kind of run us through what we know as of right now?
Yeah, so a press communication came out yesterday evening from NASA into our inboxes. You may have seen us tweet it onto our official X feed, announcing that EVA 94, which was an EVA planned for today, was going to be postponed because of a medical concern with a crew member. Now, this has happened before. For example, Mark Vanderhei had a medical concern. That was a trapped nerve. That was a few years ago. And they managed to do the EVA at a later date with a different crew member. But that was followed up a few hours later by another press communication from NASA announcing that there is a potential for the Crew-11 mission to be coming home early. If you were not aware, this launched in August of last year. Its scheduled return was February of this year. It was a 6-month rotation to the International Space Station with 4 crew members on board. And because NASA mentioned the possibility of Crew-11 coming home early, that pretty much infers that this medical situation had occurred with a member of Crew-11. And this is a pretty big step because an early return for a medical concern is something we haven't really seen before. So this is going to be a really good test of NASA's emergency scenarios and all of the training and preparations that they do before a mission in order to figure this one out. But of course, that hasn't been officially announced yet. That is just publicly announced by NASA as a possibility. But nonetheless, that's still a pretty big deal.
And along those lines, of course, there's other things that we are looking out for the potential of recovery if needed. You may recall that a lot of the assets that SpaceX is using for crew recovery has moved away from Florida and the East Coast and out to the West Coast. Max, you're over there at KSC. Have we seen any action yet with regards to recovery assets?
Well, as you just said, Sawyer, all the assets that used to be in Florida, both Megan and Shannon, that used to recover Dragon from either the Gulf or the Atlantic Ocean, have since moved over to the Pacific. So, from what we have seen, it's just Shannon now. They have since moved the recovery assets over to the Pacific. We have seen some small boats moving around Shannon, and we've also seen the actual recovery helicopter that brings the crews in from Shannon as well back to the coast for further checkouts after landing. We have seen that moving, and that serves as a bit of an indicator as to what may be happening in the near future, and certainly as could be linking the chain for what Ryan was just talking about for a potential Crew-11 return. So startling to see, nonetheless. I think it's fair to say. Of course, they are docked over in the Port of Long Beach, and we are able to track all of the movement from their assets over there via marine traffic with their current transponders. So tracking movement over there as much as we possibly can, but there is certainly activity picking up. Certainly that would be indicative of an early return of Crew-11. And all things considered, it isn't that early, considering the crew was supposed to come back after the launch of Crew-12 at some point in February, which is next month. But this is still early compared to when they wanted to come home. And so that is why we have jumped on this and want to cover it as much as we possibly can.
Exactly. And in regards to that helicopter we were talking about, it does appear to be in the air again. So it had worked its way over towards Midland. You could see it there. Potentially refueling stop. We're not exactly sure what. But that was where we last saw it. And it appears now that it is moving once again. You can see the ADSB data. So that's what they use to track all of these. Again, originally starting off in Dallas, Texas over to Midland, and we'll see if it continues westward, and if so, where it goes. Now, we've kind of been talking about this a little bit, that this isn't the first time that this has happened. Of course, you mentioned Mark Vande Hei with a pinched nerve delaying the spacewalk there, but we have had this happen once in history where a crew had to return early due to a medical issue. And for that, we have to go all the way back to November of 1985, and that was aboard Salyut 7, one of the Soyuz T-14 crew members, Vladimir Vasyutin, went up with a medical condition that they did not disclose prior to the launch, involving an inflamed and infected prostate. While they were up in space, after about 2 months, they started encountering fever and other medical concerns while they were up there that the onboard medications they had could not treat. So as a result, that mission was ended after only 2 months when it was supposed to be a 6-month mission. So that is the only other time something like this has happened in orbit. Ryan, I believe we were able to hear a little bit of the communications related to this particular incident aboard the ISS, right?
Yeah, so around between 1900 and 2000 Coordinated Universal Time, which is the afternoon Texas time, which is the afternoon which was referenced by NASA, on the communications loops which were being publicly broadcasted at the time, we heard some words from Kamiya Yui, who is a JAXA astronaut. So if we have that prepared to bring up, we can listen into what he was asking Mission Control for in Houston.
Houston Station on Space Ground 2.
Station Houston on Space Ground 2.
Okay, I'd like to request like a quick PMC and maybe Space Ground 4 or 3 for private time, please.
Okay, we'll put that in work and we'll do it on Space Ground 4. We will let you know when it's privatized and ready to go.
Understand. And Houston, we still have like a camera view in Node 2, lab.
We don't have any internal cameras right now, but we can put the lab view in if you like it.
Please do that, and if you have like if you like to have like a crew session.
Yes, we'll get that in work.
A flight session.
Now, that's a little bit hazy, a little bit staticky, difficult to hear. You know, they are flying around the Earth at 20-odd thousand kilometers per hour, 20-odd thousand miles per hour. But essentially what was happening there is Kamiya Yui was requesting a PMC, which is a private medical conference. And he was asking if they could do this on Space to Ground 4 or 3, privatized. So there are multiple different channels going up and down from the space station to Mission Control. There are public ones, which is what we heard that on, of course. That's how we were able to capture that audio. There are also private channels, which are put online when they need to discuss sensitive information, such as, you know, private crew medical concerns, which is of course going to remain anonymous for obvious reasons, and that's the correct thing for NASA to do. It's what NASA has always done. So they then set up a private conference on Space to Ground Channel 4. And the second half of that clip was actually requesting a camera be turned online. So Mission Control actually turned on a camera inside one of the labs. So you can infer a little bit from there that they were on a private audio channel for private communications. They also had a private camera turned on. So maybe there was a little bit of communication or explanation, or, you know, kind of showing what was happening that they were doing there in a private encrypted channel that no member of the public could listen into.
Exactly, and it's worth noting that there are always medical officers inside Mission Control in Houston. I'm sure it's the same over at Roscosmos over in their Mission Control in Moscow, but there's always someone there monitoring the crew's health, there and on standby as needed as a doctor, and of course they can call in specialists if they need to, which has previously happened aboard the ISS. The only serious medical incident, I guess is the best way to put it, that happened aboard the ISS was back in 2018. And that was, at the time, it was an unknown astronaut, although a medical paper was later published by Serena Anion-Chancellor, so it is believed that she might have been the one involved, was diagnosed with something called a DVT, which is deep vein thrombosis, which basically means she had a blood clot, in the jugular vein inside of her neck. She was just doing a routine medical experiment as part of one of the experiments she was doing on the station, and they happened to discover it. This, at the time, was the first ever noted blood clot, essentially, in microgravity. So they were able to contact other medical doctors, who was also cited in this medical paper in regards to what happened with that, to come in and do these private medical conferences as needed. They have medications for things on board the International Space Station. Of course, they don't have large supplies of medications, as was the case with Anion-Chancellor. They had the issue of they only had so much of the blood thinner medication that they used on board the ISS, so they had to basically do the calculations and ration it to make it last until the blood clot was cleared and until the next resupply mission could come up and resupply with more of the medication. Again, we don't know what the case is with this specifically. We don't know if medication was needed or used. This is just from a past reference. And in terms of potentially coming back, I mean, Max, the Crew-12 mission, which is the next mission to the ISS, was already moved up, right?
It was moved up into the second week of February. So I think the current date is February 12th. And of course, that would mean Crew-11 would return just after, probably around a week or so after a successful docking. Crew-11 currently has Dragon Endeavour up there with them, which is the most experienced Dragon in the fleet. And it remains ready to head home at a moment's notice during its entire 6+ month stay docked to the International Space Station. So Dragon should be ready to go. The crew remains always ready to pounce at an opportunity if they need to come home early for the sake of their crew member safety and health. But yeah, it is a startling situation to say the least. I think we're just about 3 minutes away now from the start of the press conference from NASA, and we are really eager to hear what they have to say. But the fact that we've already seen a whole bunch of recovery assets moving around, and also the helicopter moving in Central Texas, certainly points to a, I guess, unsettling outcome of this current situation. So we are currently hoping that all is well and that the crew member is still stable and well enough to make it back okay.
Exactly. And again, I should make sure that I emphasize Crew-12 was moved up previously because of the Artemis II mission. This was months ago that they announced that it was originally going to be returning in March, but actually moved it up to February to accommodate Artemis II. So it's already a moved up return to begin with. We'll see if there were a need to return, whether they would proceed to move up Crew-12 or just continue in the month without the extra crew members on there.
And slight date correction there. Sorry, Sawyer. Slight date correction there is not. It is February 15th, not the 12th for Crew-12 currently.
There we go. And again, we are a couple minutes away from that expected press conference. Also expected to speak on this situation is new NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman. We're also expecting the Associate Administrator, as well as the Chief Health and Medical Officer at NASA headquarters. So those are the three that we expect to hear from. And it's worth noting that every expedition does have at least one crew member that is assigned as a medical officer. So there's usually someone up there that is trained in the event that some medical issue comes up or occurs, that they will act as the doctor on board. Usually someone with a medical degree. We, of course, had Dr. Johnny Kim that just returned. So in terms of crew members currently on board, you have Chris Williams, who is a medical physicist with a doctorate from MIT, who is currently a flight engineer, but we don't know for certain exactly who is the medical officer for this particular expedition. You can see their live event starts soon. So as soon as that goes live, of course, we will listen in and we will be expertly with you. I believe, Ryan, you're dialed in, right?
Yep, I have the wonderful NASA hold music in my ear right now as we await this conference to start. But yeah, I'm dialed in. So if we get the opportunity, I will see if I can get a question or two in this conference. But regardless, it's going to be very fascinating to see what they have to say. Of course, like Max said, fingers crossed, hoping for the best.
Exactly. And again, in terms of their communication, it was originally just that they had postponed the spacewalk due to a medical concern with a crew member. That was then updated a couple of hours later, saying that regarding the medical situation, the matter involved a single crew member who was stable. Safely conducting our missions is our highest priority, and we are actively evaluating all options, including the possibility of an earlier end to Crew-11's mission. These are situations NASA and our partners train for and prepare to execute safely. We will provide further updates within the next 24 hours, then announcing that, of course, they will be doing the updates today at approximately 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So we should be hearing from that shortly. Also worth noting that while we wait for this press conference to start, we have also yet to be able to see video from the International Space Station since the event. Immediately after, it was noted that all of their 24/7 live feeds from the ISS were taken down, both on YouTube as well as the NASA Plus app that they have. So it's possible that resources may have been moved to that situation to be able to use all of the downlink bandwidth as opposed to the public streams. Again, all of this, we don't know the exact reason why, but the timing coincides approximately with when that happened. Those live feeds went down, I believe it was around 3 p.m.-ish yesterday time. So these are all things that we've just been noting and keeping an eye on as they've been progressing throughout the last 24 hours with this medical incident, whatever that may be.
But those are just the official NASA live streams, by the way. Right. So they initially were knocked offline, and then the YouTube links have been deleted for them, or they've gone private, or what have you. Our friends over at CEN, their live feed is still live, but their feed doesn't include audio communications, which might have been something NASA doesn't want to be broadcasting right now, or it could be a redistribution of assets to make sure they get the most downlink they can from the International Space Station to get information up and down, because of course it's very limited. They don't have Starlink or anything like that. It's still very limited, quite rudimentary communications in comparison on the International Space Station through the TDRS network and things like that. So the live feeds went down almost simultaneously from NASA at about 8 p.m. Eastern Time last night. So, yeah, very peculiar for that to happen.
Exactly. And again, we talk about the Crew-11 astronauts. 8 p.m. Eastern was when the feeds went down. Or 8 p.m. We'll get sure. 8 p.m. Eastern or UTC. We'll confirm that in a moment. 8 p.m. UTC. So that would be 3 p.m. I believe Central Time.
Yes.
Anyway. For Crew-11 currently on board, so if they needed to return early, that would include Zena Cardman, Commander Mike Fink, Kamiya Yui from JAXA, as well as Oleg Platonov from Roscosmos. Still on board the ISS who arrived via the recent Soyuz mission, Soyuz MS-28, is Sergei Kud-Sverkov, Sergei Nikolaev, as well as NASA astronaut Chris Williams. And you can see there, this is the live feed from CEN aboard the International Space Station. You can see the Dragon capsule there, obviously the sun and the Earth in the background, and that is where we have currently. And yes, Xena, by the way, I should point out, is the commander. Mike Fink is the pilot. Just want to correct myself there on that. So right now, again, we continue to wait for NASA to start their press conference here with the update on the medical situation currently ongoing aboard the International Space Station. Again, this is a live view currently from in space right now. And a reminder, on schedule to speak on this particular press conference is NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, Amit Kshatriya, who is the Associate Administrator, as well as Dr. James Polk, who is the Chief Health and Medical Officer at NASA headquarters located in Washington, D.C. there. So we should be hearing from them hopefully shortly. Again, whether they decide to stay aboard the International Space Station, have the crew come down early as a precaution. A reminder, Max, they haven't said anything specifically about it. You've been watching all of the assets on the ground that could potentially be used for recovery. A reminder, what have we seen?
So to this point, we have seen some of these smaller inflatable boats that are aboard Shannon moving around it. Shannon itself is still docked in the port of Long Beach, although the activity around it seems to suggest that crews may be getting ready for an imminent departure last minute. And last we checked with the helicopter that is coming from Central Texas, which is used to ferry the astronauts from Shannon over onto land.
And we have the press conference. I'm going to interrupt you there, so we're going to go to
Welcome
NASA.
to today's press conference to provide updates regarding the operation of the International Space Station. Thank you to those of you for joining us here in person today, and the many of you online. I'm Bethany Stevens, NASA's press secretary, and your moderator today. Our participants in today's briefing include Administrator Jared Isaacman, Associate Administrator Amit Kshatriya, and Chief Health and Medical Officer Dr. J.D. Polk. Each of the participants will provide opening remarks and updates prior to shifting to Q&A. With that, I'll give the floor to Administrator Isaacman.
All right. Thank you, Bethany, and thank you for everyone being here on short notice. So for over 60 years, NASA has set the standard for safety and security in crewed spaceflight. In these endeavors, including the 25 years of continuous human presence on board the International Space Station, the health and the well-being of our astronauts is always and will be our highest priority. Yesterday, January 7th, a single crew member on board the station experienced a medical situation and is now stable. After discussions with Chief Health and Medical Officer Dr. J.D. Polk, and leadership across the agency, I've come to the decision that it's in the best interest of our astronauts to return Crew-11 ahead of their planned departure. Within the coming days, the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft will depart the International Space Station with Commander Zena Cardman, pilot Mike Fink, Kimya Yui from JAXA, and Oleg Platonov of Roscosmos, and safely return them to Earth. We expect to provide a further update within the next 48 hours as to the anticipated undock and reentry timeline. Over the last 5 months, Crew-11 contributed to the ongoing operations of the space station, conducted extensive scientific research, completed the majority of their mission objectives, and upheld the standards of professionalism for which astronauts are known. Crew-12 is currently scheduled to launch as soon as mid-February. Alongside our international and commercial partners, NASA is evaluating their timeline to include earlier launch opportunities. We will provide more information when it's available. In the meantime, NASA astronaut Chris Williams, having launched to the station on November 27th on Soyuz MS-28, maintains our American presence in space and will support the space station's operations and scientific efforts. NASA astronauts and our teams in mission control and our professionals who train for every possible scenario at every step of the mission, including moments just like this. I'm proud of the swift effort across the agency thus far to ensure the safety of our astronauts, and I know NASA and our commercial partners will successfully bring Crew-11 safely home. And with that, I'll turn it over to Associate Administrator Amit Kshatriya.
Good evening. Thank you, sir. I'll be brief. We'll get to Dr. Polk as soon as we can, but I'll just add a few comments. In every discussion over the last 24 hours as we've assessed the situation, crew safety has always remained our highest priority, and as it always is across the agency. We never take shortcuts. We never compromise when it comes to protecting our astronauts. The work accomplished during this period reflects the precision and professionalism of the flight control teams on the ground and the astronauts aboard ISS. Our crews are extensively trained, as the administrator mentioned, to manage unexpected medical situations and other off-nominal events, including onboard training, which we conduct regularly for these situations. Yesterday was a textbook example of that training in action. Once the situation on the station stabilized, careful deliberations led us to the decision to return Crew-11, as the administrator mentioned, while ensuring minimal operational impact to ongoing work aboard ISS. Operating ISS is a complicated task and has been for the past 25 years with crews on board. The safe operation of the station and the protection of the crew, who are the stewards of station operations, is the hallmark of flight operations and what we are reminded of every day of the unforgiving nature of human space flight. With that, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Polk.
Thanks, Amit. First, probably goes without saying, but I'll still reiterate as a physician that I'm not going to speak about any particular astronaut or any particular specific diagnoses. I'd ask that we still respect the privacy of the astronaut. As administrator, mentioned earlier, the astronaut is absolutely stable. So I have to reiterate that again. But anytime we have a medical incident, we embark on looking at diagnoses and what we would call a workup to get a differential diagnosis on what's happening with that patient or astronaut on board. And as many of you know, we have a very robust suite of medical hardware on board the International Space Station, but we don't have the complete amount of hardware that I would have in the emergency department, for example, to complete a workup of a patient. And in this particular incident, that the medical incident was sufficient enough that we were concerned about the astronaut, that we would like to complete that workup. And the best way to complete that workup is on the ground, where we have the full suite of medical testing hardware. Now, again, because the astronaut is absolutely stable, this is not an emergent evacuation. We're not immediately disembarking and getting the astronaut down. But it leaves that lingering risk and lingering question as to what that diagnosis is. And that means there's some lingering risk for that astronaut on board. And so always we err on the side of the astronaut's health and welfare. And in this particular case, we are doing the same. And I should reiterate, in our 25-year history of the International Space Station, we've had many models and Monte Carlo analysis models that have said we should have had a medical evacuation approximately every 3 years in that 25-year history, and we've not had one to date. And even in this case, we're erring on the side of caution. Again, it's not an emergent evacuation, but we are erring on the side of caution for the crew member and in their best interest and in their best medical welfare. And with that, I think we will take questions. Is that it, Bethany? Okay.
So with that, we will open the floor to questions. So if there's anybody here in the room who would like to ask any questions, we'll open it to y'all first. And if not, I will turn this over to the operator to go to the phone bridge. And we'll go with Kristen Fisher with Endless Void Media. There's a microphone right behind you. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for holding this briefing. My question is for really whoever wants to take it. I understand you guys can't speak to the specific nature of this astronaut's medical condition, but I'm curious if you all can shed some light on the hours before a spacewalk takes place and the strain that can put on an astronaut's body. And can you say if that at all contributed to the medical condition that this astronaut suffered? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. This actually had nothing to do with the operational environment in preparing for a spacewalk at all. This was totally unrelated to any operations on board. And of course, we do a huge amount of testing for astronauts before they go to orbit. And they're used to those operational environments. They practice the spacewalk and the pre-breathe many, many, many times. But this was not related to the operations or the spacewalk at all.
Thank you.
And with that, we will go to the phone bridge online.
Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you'd like to ask a question, please press star one. Unmute your phone and record your name clearly. If you need to withdraw your question, press star two. Again, to ask a question, please press star one. Our first question is from Bill Harwood from CBS News. Go ahead, your line is open.
Thank you very much. Bill Harwood, CBS News. This is either for the administrator or Amit. Can you move up Crew-12, bring Crew-11 down, and still take care of Artemis 2 in February as currently planned, or would you need some separation between those missions, and might that mean a slip to March for Artemis 2? Thanks.
So the question was, if we pull up the timeline on Crew-12, will that have the potential to interfere with our Artemis 2 preparations? These would be totally separate campaigns at this point. We would, as we mentioned before, we're still evaluating what earlier dates would be achievable, if any, for Crew-12. So Right now, we're going to look at all of our standard process to prepare for Crew-12 and look for opportunities if we can bring it in while simultaneously conducting our Artemis II campaign. There's no reason to believe at this point in time that there'd be any overlap that we'd have to deconflict for.
Next question is from Joey Roulette from Reuters. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hey, thanks. Question for anyone who can answer it. Can you say if this medical issue is related to an injury that was sustained on the space station? I know we said it wasn't related to any operational environment or operational issues, but was it an injury versus some other type of medical issue? And then also, is there anything you have to do regulatorily with Crew Dragon in order to get it to come home early? Like, do you have to work with the FAA for some kind of emergency situation? Thanks.
So perhaps I can just hit the second part of that question, and then Doctor, if you want to address the first part. I mean, first of all, this is not an emergency deorbit. We retain the capability to bring astronauts home in a matter of hours if necessary. So this is recognizing, first of all, we're always going to do the right thing for our astronauts, but it's recognizing it's the end of the Crew-11 mission right now. They've achieved almost all of their mission objectives. Crew-12 is going to launch in a matter of weeks anyway. This is an opportune time when the vehicle is ready, when weather supports, to bring our crew home. So that's how it's looking. That's why we're going to get back to you in the next couple days as to what that timeline looks like. But it is not an emergency deorbit, even though we always retain that capability, and NASA and our partners train for that potential routinely. And then if you want to address the first part of the question.
Yeah, once again, this is not an operational issue. This is not an injury that occurred in the pursuit of operations, if that was the question. But unrelated to the operational environment that we have right now. It's mostly having a medical issue in the difficult areas of microgravity, and with the suite of hardware that we have at our avail to complete a diagnosis.
And now we'll move to Stephanie Chin of NHQ.
Yeah, hello, thank you. So two general questions. Would you consider any part of this operation, like especially like unusual, or are there any like special actions that you are able to maybe elaborate on a little bit more? And in a related sense, there's going to be like the Crew Dragon will be absent for a while, and could you maybe also elaborate on like how the remaining crew members will be dealing with this, and how how the return will look like?
Sure. I'm so sorry. The first part of your question, is it unusual? I'm sorry.
Yeah, like is this like especially uncommon, or like?
Well, as Dr. Polk mentioned, it's the first time we've done a controlled medical evacuation from the vehicle, so that is unusual. However, the procedures we're using to prepare for that are nominal procedures because, again, what's important to us is the whole crew, and we don't want to do anything, given the nature of the condition, that we put any other additional risk on the crew by diverging from our normal processes. So that's why we're doing essentially a controlled and expedited return. So no, from that standpoint, but from the standpoint that we have to do it in general, yes, it is unusual. But your second part?
The Crew Dragon will be temporarily absent, obviously.
That's right.
And how will the remaining crew members be kind of dealing with this situation?
Yeah, it's a good question. First of all, this is one of the reasons why we fly mixed crews on Soyuz and U.S. vehicles, because we want to make sure we have operators for both segments, Russian and U.S. segments, and can perform all the nominal maintenance and other capabilities on the vehicle. There are a handful of exceptions in this particular case. In the history of ISS, we've had different crew complements. We flew with 3 crew for many years during assembly and also during certain anomalous events. So that in and of itself is not unusual. There is, a slightly elevated risk from the standpoint of we will not be conducting nominal or contingency U.S. EVAs because right now we have a single U.S. crew member on board, and that carries with it, slightly elevated risk of our ability to respond in some cases. But that traded against, with Crew-12 being prepared for launch and our ability to potentially exercise acceleration options as well as the other contingency procedures we can execute. And we believe that risk trades favorably in order to make sure we get into this safe configuration.
Thank you.
Yep.
And now I'll hand it back over to the operator to tend to those who are joining us virtually via the phone bridge.
Thank you. Our next question is from Lauren Grouch from Bloomberg. Go ahead, your line is open.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. This is for anyone who wants to answer. I'm just curious, will any extra precautions need to be taken to make sure the specific crew member affected will be comfortable and safe during their return to Earth? And are any special precautions being made on board right now in light of this medical issue to make sure that they are safe and healthy? Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. That's a great question. We actually plan for and work towards contingencies with every landing. So there's always emergency equipment. There are always preparations made to make sure all the crew members are in good shape and comfortable. There is no deviation from that or special plan, if you will, that we have to do with this crew member. Again, they are absolutely stable, but we prepare for anomalies or medical issues on every landing. Spaceflight is a dynamic environment, and certainly splashing down in the ocean is, as Administrator Isaacman knows firsthand. So we always prepare for those environments. We always have a suite of medical equipment and flight surgeons on board the ship, and and contingency hospitals ready to go on every landing. So this is no different in that respect.
Our next question is from Jonathan Siri from Fox News. Go ahead, your line's open.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. This is a forward-looking question for Jared Isaacman. As NASA looks ahead to establishing a permanent presence on the moon and long-duration missions to Mars, what in-space medical capabilities would you like to have in place to support crew members?
Well, I appreciate the question. I mean, this is what we've been honing our skills on for the last 25 years. So every spacecraft, whether it's Dragon or Starliner or Orion, is equipped with medical kits to treat what we think are the most common medical developments that will happen as a result of being in the microgravity environment. The International Space Station is far more equipped. It has extensive capabilities, which is why we've done such a fantastic job over the last 25 years of caring for our crew members as they've maintained a continuous presence on orbit. So we are doing all of this to continue to learn. We will absolutely learn from this situation as well to see if that informs our future on-orbit operations, whether that be in the space station or our future lunar base that we are pursuing right now, and eventually for deep space missions to Mars. This is why the International Space Station is such a fantastic on-orbiting laboratory for this, for this type of a learning environment.
Our next question is from Denise Chow from NBC News. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. Just for whoever is able to answer it, I was just wondering if someone could provide any kind of insight into how the entire crew is feeling. I understand astronauts are trained for all sorts of contingencies, but given that this is quite rare and unusual, I'm just wondering how the disposition of the crew members. Thank you.
I think we can all probably weigh in because we've all been having communication with the flight controllers, and I've spoken to crew members as well quite recently. This is exactly what our astronauts train and prepare for. So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, everybody did exactly as they had prepared for in a situation like this. They're all trained professionals. We're keeping them very well informed, but I would say that in light of the situation, everyone is performing as we would have expected.
We can continue online with the phone bridge.
Our next question is from Eileen Klautz from Aviation Week in Space Technology. Go ahead, your line is open.
Thanks very much. It's Irene Klotz. Are you planning any changes in the splashdown convoy and any changes also in just the deorbit and splash procedures? Would you be activating any additional sites to avoid weather delays or anything else you might be thinking of at this point? Thanks.
I think, Irene, my understanding of the situation right now, we are planning for what would, other than the fact that we have pulled forward the timeline, a completely nominal deorbit. So we would still be targeting the same approved splashdown locations. We already prearranged various medical facilities as a standard, as part of our standard operating procedure, as the doctor explained previously. So we always retain the capability for an emergency deorbit. And I think that does speak to the situation and our confidence of how we're managing the situation. Is this is not an emergency deorbit where we would consider other than our pre-planned site. So right now we're looking for the correct opportunity to use our existing landing sites, our existing recovery vessels alongside our partner.
Our next question is from Will Robinson Smith from Spaceflight Now. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Question to either the administrator or assistant administrator. Given that there will be a gap between when Crew-11 departs and when Crew-12 is able to get there, can you talk about weighing the risk of just having one U.S. crew member on board station in the event of an additional, or in the event of an emergency? I realize this is not an emergent event that's causing Crew-11 to return, but were there to be an emergency on station, if there's just a Soyuz, how do you handle that? Thanks.
Thanks for the question. Having a single Soyuz on board ISS is a config we're very familiar with. As I mentioned earlier, we flew space station that way for many, many years. We always protect for, in the event of a subsequent failure on the vehicle, that we would be able to bring that crew home safely, and the vehicle is very autonomous and robust and can be configured in a way to support uncrewed operations as needed. So from that standpoint, that additional risk compared to how we've flown in the past is well understood. We generally do, and we like to have U.S. EVA capability at the ready to respond to additional failures. And in those particular cases, we would have a delayed response to one of those significant failures if we had them on board. That, of course, the vehicle is very fault tolerant. So not only we would have to have a major subsequent failure, but then a failure after that before we had a real contingency on board ISS, which is why, as we evaluated the situation, we decided it made a lot more sense to protect for a situation that we knew was something we needed to deal with, rather than something of a likelihood that we deemed lower than normal. And also the crew on board, both Russian and American, are well trained to operate in the environment that they're in and can operate the nominal systems, the nominal research per the plan until their crewmates arrive on Crew-12.
Next question is from Anthony Leon from Spectrum News. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hello, that's Leonie. Thank you so much, all three, for taking the time to speak with us today. My question is, I guess, for Mr. Isaacman. Going forward, will NASA consider having an actual medical officer, MD, on board the ISS and future space missions? And this is for Dr. Polk. How's the crew equipped to dealing with medical issues that were to come up in this situation? Can you sort of explain how they were able to help this astronaut who had this medical issue? Thank you.
So, to just address from my portion in this, all of our astronauts go through extensive medical training. There is, as I described before, a lot of capabilities on the International Space Station that our astronauts interact with routinely, whether it's part of their science research obligations or just training simulations for these type of contingencies. I don't think if one of our astronauts on board was a medical doctor, it would have changed anything as it relates to our decision process on this. I think that speaks to their level of training. Also, our teams on the ground. We have flight surgeons, and not to mention numerous other surgeons and doctors that are available to weigh in on these type of situations. So, I think simply put, if you have enough people in a challenging environment of microgravity for now approaching, exceeding a quarter of a century, certain situations will develop that almost regardless of the on-orbit capabilities, you're gonna take the correct action to bring them home. And I think that's worth reinforcing too, that we are exercising the capabilities that were designed into the International Space Station at will right now. So we can bring our crew home early in a safe way, not in an emergency, to its nominal landing site, because they largely completed their mission objectives. We can evaluate Crew-12, which is weeks away, potentially pull them forward, and do so and operate the station in its intended environment. We have an American astronaut on board. It's why they fly on Soyuz. It's why we fly Roscosmos astronauts on our vehicle. And as Amit pointed out before, this is also an environment that we operated the space station on for many, many years prior to our current Crew Dragon capabilities. And I don't know if you want to add anything else on that, Doctor. Okay.
And before we leap back to the phone bridge, I have a question from Laura Kolodny of CNBC, who's having a bit of trouble accessing it. She asks, ISS is operating in a roughly neutral power mode at the moment, and that upgrade was to get power positive. What will happen now with regards to the solar array?
Not sure about the neutral power mode. Space station, the intent of the EVA that was coming was to augment the 2 alpha solar array with a great new technology, the rollout solar arrays, which we added to the vehicle in order to configure the vehicle for future expansion for commercial activity. So the baseline power configuration of the station is well above the expected margins that we needed to. This EVA was not a contingency that was planned. It was a nominal augmentation of the power system, which we've done on 5 of the other arrays. And that rollout array that was going to be installed is really an amazing piece of hardware. We've used Space Station, as the administrator said, as an incredible test bed for exploration, as well as to help stimulate commercial space activity. And that array design is something we've used. Many other companies have used that exact array design. And so we're continuing the suite of the upgrades we had planned on ISS, but there's by no means urgency that the 2 alpha array has to be upgraded given the current power config of the vehicle.
And we can return back to the phone bridge now for virtual questions.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mike Wall from space.com. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thank you very much. This is probably for Dr. Polk. This is the first medical evacuation from the ISS, but are there any incidents over the 25-year history of astronauts on the station that you can kind of look to for guidance or to kind of draw up protocols?
Yeah, actually, we've had a host of different things that we have treated on orbit, and fortunately for us, we've had equipment and medications and things to be able to handle all of those, such that we were able to complete the treatment and or the diagnosis on orbit over the last 25 years. And common things occur commonly, right? It's folks could have a toothache, folks could have ear pain. There are things that you see commonly on the ground as well over a 6-month period, and in urgent care can happen in space as well. But we are very good at forecasting and having the correct medical equipment and the medications to be able to handle those. And so we've had, although we've had multiple different medical things that we've worked over the last 25 years, all of those have been worked to completion on orbit and without incident.
The next question is from Marina Corin from Freelance Journalist. Go ahead, your line's open.
Hi, thank you. This question is for Dr. Polk. Could you give us a sense of what the affected crew member will experience over the next couple of days? Have they been told to stop working? How often will they be talking to medical personnel on the ground? And will any of the crew members be asked to provide them with medical support? Thank you.
I couldn't hear that either.
The question was if we are monitoring the crew member, are we restricting any of their activities, such, that's all.
Yeah, I won't really go into a lot of detail on that one because I think that gives maybe too much detail to allude towards a diagnosis or skirts up close to the privacy aspects. Certainly the crew surgeons are monitoring the crew member and they will amend or alter anything that they see fit on the crew member if they need to. But the crew member, again, is absolutely stable. And so, I don't foresee massive changes to the timeline or their activities.
Next question is from Marcia Smith from SpacePolicyOnline.com. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thanks so much for taking my question. I'm guessing this is probably for Amit. I'm curious, so Chris Williams is going to be the only American up there, and he's going to have the whole U.S. segment to look after. And I'm curious, are there certain experiments or something you're going to have to set aside because he's the only one there? And have the Russians been trained at all on the American segment that they could help him out if necessary?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. There will be some. Of course, a full complement crew can do a lot more work, and so in terms of the amazing research we do on the vehicle, so we will have to adjust the timeline for that single crew operation. But Chris is trained to do every task that we would ask him to do on the vehicle. Of course, we also do a lot of the operations of the vehicle from our various control centers all over the world, including commercial control centers that operate a lot of our research payloads. So he will have thousands of people looking over his shoulder like our crews do all the time to help sure that they continue the groundbreaking science. To your question about the Russian crew members, historically we had in the past we had trained the Russian crew members to higher levels in terms of their ability to operate uniquely on their own U.S. systems. That is, that's something we used to do in the past, and we kind of put that aside as we swelled the size of the U.S. crew complements. But the Russians that are on board with him, first of all, they've trained tightly together. They're a great team. They work really well together. But they also have qualification to operate the U.S. systems in an advisory mode or an assistant mode, and can, if needed, be called upon with the assistance of MCC Houston or MCC Moscow to assist in any operations.
Next question is from Ryan Catton from NASASpaceflight.com. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thanks very much for doing this, Ryan Caton, NSF. For the administrator, in your opening remarks, you mentioned that you made the decision to bring the crew home early. I was just wondering if you could provide any information as to why you made that decision, of course, if you were able to while remaining anonymous. Thank you.
I'm sorry, did you ask at what point in time that decision was arrived at?
I was just wondering if you could provide any information as to why you made that decision specifically while remaining anonymous.
Generically asking whether we're straight, I think we addressed that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Thank you for that. I think no matter what, at any point or any phase of the expedition, had the situation presented itself, we would arrive at the exact same conclusion. I will say that it certainly made it that much easier and faster when you already have a crew that has done a fantastic job at achieving their on-orbit objectives. You have Crew-12 that's quickly approaching the launch. So I think that made it very easy from our perspective to trade the crew complement on orbit for just a matter of weeks longer versus ensuring that our crew is down here on Earth where they can get the best possible care and treatment if required.
I think we have time for just a couple more questions, so I'll turn it back over to the phone bridge.
Our next question is from Robert Perlman from Collect Space. Go ahead, your line's open.
Thank you. For the administrator and for Dr. Polk, first, because it involves crew members from other countries, was JAXA and Roscosmos, did they need to sign off on the plan to come home early, or were they consulted at all? And for Dr. Polk, you mentioned, or it's been described that the crew member was stable. Was he or she always in a stable condition, or were there any actions needed to be taken aboard the space station, if you could say without going into detail, that arrived at them being in a stable condition?
So first, with respect to our international partners, I think JAXA held a news conference earlier today where they were able to speak about some of the information we put out. So I think that just speaks to the communication and the sharing of information that's been taking place across what is the International Space Station. So I think they've been, lockstep with us the entire journey. Will continue to be as we evaluate the exact deorbit timeline for the vehicle. And as we consider possibilities as it relates to the Crew-12 mission. And with that, Doctor.
Yeah, I think the administrator covered this earlier, but I won't go into specific details about the medical incident itself, but the crew is highly trained and they came to the aid of their colleague right away. And that's part of why we do that training, and we do it with every increment.
Next question is from Manuel Mazzandis from Exploración Espacial. Go ahead, your line is open.
Thank you so much, Manuel Mazzanti from Exploración Espacial. A question for Administrator Isaacman. I wonder if you can provide more details. If this decision was consensual with a crew member that was not feeling well, and now that the decision, that the situation is stable, I don't know if this crew member was insisting on staying. I'm feeling well, I want to stay up to the remaining of the mission, and then unilaterally NASA decided, no, is it better for all of you to come back earlier? Can you provide more details on that decision? Thank you.
So I think, as we mentioned before, obviously this was a serious medical condition. That is why we're pursuing this path. Crew member is stable, as we mentioned. We're not electing an emergency deorbit, but obviously, as we've already communicated, the capability to diagnose and treat this properly does not live on the International Space Station. And I think there's pretty broad agreement across our experts here on the ground, as well as the crew members in space. So I think there's complete alignment around that point.
And we have time for just one more question, so we will toss it to the phone bridge for David's question.
Our last question is from David Curley from Full Throttle. Go ahead, your line's open.
Dr. Polk, I know you're in the middle of an incident. A little early to talk about lessons learned, but we've talked about diagnostics. Have you decided, are there diagnostic tools? Is there something that's coming with AI that might help with this kind of situation in the future? What are you thinking about beyond this incident?
Yeah, that's a great question. As the administrator mentioned before, we're always learning new things with each increment, and that's the value of the International Space Station. And we are looking at AI, we are looking at all tools, and of course, medical hardware, medical technology evolves over the years very rapidly, and of course with AI even more so over the last several years. And so we're looking at all potential technologies, including AI, to augment the crew's health and safety, especially as we get to Moon and Mars. And that'll be the advantage to the Moon as well, is to use it as a test bed for many of these technologies on our way to Mars.
And with that last question, I will turn the floor over to Administrator Isaacman for any closing remarks.
I appreciate everybody responding and being on site and with good questions right now. As I mentioned before, we are exercising the capabilities that we have pioneered over the life of the International Space Station. We have the ability to bring our crew member home under these circumstances in a very planned and controlled way. We have the ability to evaluate Crew-12 and their timeline and look for opportunities to potentially pull that forward if required. The International Space Station, and the way we design our crew complements between the vehicles, is meant for this type of circumstance. That's why we will retain an American crew member to interact with the American segments, and that's also why we fly Russian and international crew members on our vehicles. So this is proceeding exactly as designed. This is how we train for these type of situations routinely. And what you're seeing right now is NASA communicating and being as transparent as we possibly can. And as soon as we have updates as to the next big milestones are going to be determining our reentry timeline, we will be the first to share it with you, and we will do the same with respect to our Crew-12 timeline. And thank you.
And that concludes today's briefing. Thank you.
All right, there you go. That the update there from NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, that the Crew-11 astronauts will indeed be ending their mission early. So for those who kind of missed part of what happened there, just to briefly summarize, the crew of 4 will undock and re-enter sometime in the coming days. They have not said exactly when. As pointed out, they will address those dates as they work on them. The doctor saying that this crew member, who again they did not identify, was absolutely stable, was their wording. They did mention at one point that this was a serious incident, but that the crew member is currently absolutely stable, was the quote. Basically saying that they needed to create a workup to diagnose everything that was going on with this crew. And while they have hardware aboard the International Space Station that is quite robust, it's not enough to complete the full workup, as they word it, and the best way to do that is to bring the crew member home. Again, this is not an emergent evacuation, as they said. This is a standard sort of medical evacuation, although this is the first time in the ISS's 25-year history that this has indeed happened. So the return should be in the California area off the Pacific Ocean, which is their normally planned return locations. It will, of course, be the normal return assets. As for when the crew returns, they always have medical personnel, flight surgeons on board. They also always have a hospital on standby, as we saw, I believe, with the return of Crew-9, with one of the crew members asking to return or to be taken for medical examination there. So we assume that's what will happen at that point. Also, the mission objectives mostly completed as they get ready to return, leaving 3 members on board of the MS-28 crew, including 1 American astronaut. Crew-12 currently scheduled for February, although there is the potential they are looking at moving it up just a little bit if the dates exist, to have that launch sooner to return the U.S. capability. Ryan, of course, you were on that press conference call there. Just want to know what your thoughts were hearing this.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's very nice to hear NASA leadership, which knows what they're talking about. They've made a clear and decisive decision. They're going to bring the crew home early, and it's nice to hear that Jared Isaacman said, in response to my question, this would have happened regardless of the point in the mission. They're not doing this now because they only have 7-8 weeks left. They would have made this exact same decision at any point during their half-year or so expedition to the International Space Station. I mean, this is clearly, this is a big moment. This has never happened before on the International Space Station. This is a crew coming home early because of a medical situation. It was also wonderful to hear that the crew member remains in a stable condition and that they are not having to implement an emergency evacuation, an emergency deorbit. They are going to be coming back on a nominal schedule just earlier than planned. So they're not having to rush for the capsule. They're not having to get back to Earth as soon as possible. They just want to be able to bring the unwell crew member home in order to evaluate them using medical equipment available on the ground, which of course isn't available on the International Space Station. The ISS is very limited on the mass you can bring up there, very limited on the equipment which can actually fit inside the space station, of course, so it's not going to have everything that a hospital on Earth is going to have, for example. So that was also wonderful to hear that this isn't, NASA doesn't need to bring the astronaut home as soon as possible. They just want to bring them back down to Earth so they can evaluate them after this serious medical incident.
Yeah, they mentioned that, of course, if they stay up there, there is always that lingering risk. So, of course, bringing them back down, being able to get them to an actual hospital. And again, they pointed out they have things for the basic things you might go into an emergency care for. One of those same-day health clinics, things like toothaches, earaches, those all happen. And again, they have medications for certain things on board, but not for everything on board. Max, I mean, this is obviously historic to see the first return in 25 years. Want to know your thoughts on this as well.
Well, I think twofold. I think it was a bit reassuring to hear that it wasn't emergent and then they didn't have to dive for Dragon Endeavor and come back immediately. And the fact that the crew member is stable is very, very reassuring to hear. And it's also refreshing to hear all of the leaders present speaking so confidently about their decision. And from what we can tell, if we were in their shoes, they would have made the exact same decision, or confidently, I should say. And it's also, I think in terms of timing, this almost couldn't have happened at a better time, considering Crew-11 has completed most of their mission to this point, and they were scheduled to come back at some point just next month, about 1 month from now. So, timing-wise, I think it was about as good as it really could have gotten. And the fact that they are able to maintain a nominal re-entry and splashdown timeline compared to if they had to rush down is also boding confidence in their decision and that the astronaut will come out of this perfectly fine. at the end of the day, we're all human. We all go through things, and astronauts on the space station are no different. Whether it be something minor that comes up that can be treated with just a first aid kit, or just some small meds, or something of this nature that happens to a point where NASA leaders want to bring them back early because of it. It happens. We're all human, and despite the thorough checks that each and every astronaut that passes through NASA goes through, stuff can still happen. So a bit alarming, but it was very assuring to hear them speaking so confidently in their decision, and that everything that is going to come out okay out of this one.
Exactly. And I mean, there's a bunch of documentation out that NASA has of pharmaceuticals and other injuries that they've seen in the past. This document that they released, I mean, there's people who have had back injuries or strains and sprains. There's people who have had hand injuries and fingernail removals due to EVA-related things, other types of injuries. They did not say what it was on this one. There is something in the United States called HIPAA, which is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Basically means they can keep all these medical records sealed from the public and keep it quiet. So that is why we didn't get as much information. The information that we did get in regards to the condition is that it was not related to the spacewalk that they were about to do, not related to any of that preparation, and not an injury related to the operational environment. I apologize if I look you off screen. I'm just reading through the notes from the press conference here. So that is what the doctor was able to say about this, and obviously medical issues are a little more difficult than you would expect normally when you are in that microgravity environment. So lots discussed here. Is there anything that I'm missing, guys, as I'm going through all of this?
I mean, just on that point, I think it's really interesting that this incident is confirmed to have not been as a result of those preparations which they were conducting for the spacewalk yesterday, which the spacewalk was meant to happen today, because of course there is a pre-breathe exercise. There are many different steps, getting equipment ready and things like that, where things can go wrong if you don't do them correctly in preparing for a spacewalk. And if you get the bends, for example, that's a really uncomfortable experience, to say the least, putting it lightly. But so it's wonderful to hear that those kinds of things didn't happen in this situation, that they didn't have or those EVA-related things, I should say, didn't happen in regard to this crew member, and that it's not an operational thing that's happened. It's obviously come from that crew member themselves.
Exactly. And again, of course, it's very hush-hush on the information. I'm not sure how much, if ever, we'll learn about this situation. I'm sure there will be medical papers that will eventually be released, as we saw with Onion Chancellor with her blood clot that she encountered. Max, you noted some of the wording that the doctor had when describing at the very end, though.
Yeah, so I think it was Jared actually speaking about it, but I think based on what information that we have gotten to this point, that we were able to think or imagine that this was probably a serious occurrence, and Jared actually said that this was a quote serious medical occurrence, and I think that in itself is a little bit chilling, but the fact that they have the crew member stable and about ready to come back is sufficient enough, at least for the time being. I mean, in orbit, in zero G or microgravity, forgive me, your body is already in an environment that it's not meant so, and not everyone reacts to it or adapts to it as well as some others. And I know astronauts that do not get space sickness at all throughout a 6, 8, 10, 12 month stay aboard the space station. And then there are some that have it for the first 3 or 4 days of their mission, and then their body adapts. And then there's some astronauts that have it for a majority of their mission. Their body just never fully adapts to being in a zero G environment. So, I mean, being up in zero G, you are already experiencing that very foreign environment to what your body was made for, but also you are subject to much higher levels of radiation as well. So your body is just in a place it's not meant to be in. So, but it's good to know that this wasn't a result of the actual operational scenario, and that this had nothing to do with EVA preparations. So, very peculiar. Very curious to know what would happen, as I'm sure we all are. But we're never going to know, I think, at least until either a paper is published or NASA or the crew member opts to say something publicly. But at this point, I think it's safe to say that they are in the best hands that they possibly can.
Exactly, and that was one of the things they pointed out is every crew member on board the ISS is trained for these medical scenarios. So it's not that this is something that they're not ready for. They train for it. Every expedition for the past 25 years has been prepared for it, in addition to all the flight surgeons that they have in mission control and other doctors and flight surgeons that they can reach out to while they're on the ground, as Jared mentioned, for additional input and information. So we'll see what happens with that. Of course, as soon as we have information on when that capsule you see there on your screen will return, we will be sharing that on all of our social media channels, so make sure you follow NSF on your favorite social channel. And of course, we will keep all of you updated as soon as we know anything. We'll be sure to discuss this more as well tomorrow on the Flame Trench, as well as in This Week in Spaceflight, which is our news recap show. So keep an eye out for all of that. And again, I do want to make sure, based off what you see on the screen there, that we do give a thank you to Sen, our ISS Live camera partner, for providing those additional views that you've been seeing on the screen. I also need to thank the team that's been doing research in the background. There's been a lot of people helping prepare for all of this, gathering information, doing research on top of what we've been looking at on our own here. D-Wise, Jay Keegan have been in the back channel helping with everything to get all of this information for you. So I want to make sure we give them a shout out. And of course, the most important thing is that our thoughts are indeed with this crew member and with the crew themselves. And of course, we wish a speedy recovery to them and a safe return for Crew-11. Again, that's Commander Zena Cardman, Pilot Mike Fink, Mission Specialist from JAXA, Camilla Yui, and Mission Specialist from Roscosmos, Oleg Platonov. Those should be returning back in the next couple of days. You could see them all on your screen right there. So, of course, we will be monitoring that situation extremely closely. Ryan Caton getting in there asking a question. Thank you as well for joining and for jumping on that phone bridge. I believe you may be muted, Ryan.
Wonderful as always. There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Fingers crossed we get an update from NASA, as Jared Isaacman said, within 48 hours' time. It's always wonderful to come on and talk about these things.
Exactly. And again, we'll see what happens with Crew-12 launching from KSC sometime probably in February, maybe earlier. And that is where Max Evans has been for us today. Thank you, Max.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming to hang out with us today and find out more about what is happening. Spaceflight is a very dynamic environment, as I'm sure we all know, and things like this can happen. So I think all things considered, this whole event came out well.
Exactly. Again, I think we'll all breathe a little easier once the crew member is on the ground and able to be treated back on Earth with the full suite of medical instruments that they don't have aboard the ISS. And a huge thank you as well to Kevin Michael Reed for producing today and providing those live views, getting in the feed, bringing up all of those audio clips and everything that we've needed to bring this story to you. So thank you. And thank you, everyone, for treating this with the respect that it deserves. I know NSF sometimes is known for its looser, kind of goofier atmosphere, but obviously in a situation like this, we are journalists at heart. We really just want the best for the crew. I'm Sawyer Rosenstein. I have been your host for today's press conference and update on Crew-11 returning home early due to a medical issue on board. Make sure you stay on the socials to stay updated, and we will see you all next time.
And here we go. There's the deluge. Here's ignition.
Doubling up.
Did it just do a Kerbal? Back to the moon and beyond.
Put that in the big bag, you know.
Back at home, we all have a lot of work to do, but from here, it sure looks like a perfect world.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
We did have an observation.
Equination.
343 unfolds to go.
It's orange.
Water towers can fly! Bingo! Right in the center. Where's Jacqueline? There it is! That was surreal.
That's not what we want to see.
No!
Oh my God.
Yikes. You bet. We don't need any more of these.